The Goobbue of Eastern Thanalan is one of the most interesting and overlooked stories in the FF14 world. As you made your way questing in the area, you might have caught a brief glimpse of the creature or its resting place. The Goobbue's origins have become the stuff of legend with the peoples of Thanalan and adventurers alike. As a result, conflicting stories as to how it ended up in Thanalan have sprung up throughout the years. In this video, we pay due respect to this creature. Let's explore the story of the Lonely Giant, the Goobbue of Eastern Thanalan. Let's first go over the local legends. The first tale is told to us by Barry, who resides in the Church of Saint Adama Lamdana. He seeks your help with obtaining Altic lavender for a bereaved person who wished to place it upon a grave. This flower is rare in Thanalan these days, but Barry knows a special place where it can be found. He directs us to the east, where we find the Lonely Giant, the remains of a Goobbue who is covered in all manner of unique plants and flowers from across Eorzea. After we retrieve the lavender, Barry tells us its story. The dead Goobbue was a child of Coerthus. The calamity shattered its native mountains, and it fled before the destruction as a caravan flies before a sandstorm. Years it wandered. We found it dying and received its memories. It had gathered seeds from every land it passed through, and they flower upon its corpse, a living map to its loss and exile. North to south, mountains to the desert, cloudberry and shooting stars, merry bells and cliff roses, Altic lavender from Lower Thanalan, even roselles from Bloodshore. His story states this Goobbue left Coerthus during the calamity and travelled all the way to Thanalan. Quite the journey for anybody to undertake. Alalafell and Camp Drybone also sends us to the Goobbue for Altic lavender, and their story of its origins matches that of Barry's. The next tale is told to us by Josper, a botanist who can be found observing the Goobbue's resting place. It is my belief that the Goobbue was present at the Battle of Cartanel years ago. After its rider was struck down in battle, it sought shelter from the destruction raining down from the heavens, passing through the Twelves Wood before arriving here in Thanalan. During this journey, the seeds of myriad plants came to cling to its body. Though the poor Goobbue succumbed to its injuries in the end, these seeds would take root and eventually sprout from its carcass. His story is very interesting, implying that this Goobbue was present at Cartanel. More than likely it was rode there by one of the many adventurers who fought there that day, and stood away from the fighting awaiting its master's return. After calamity struck, it sought shelter, eventually ending up in Thanalan. The rest of its tale matches that of the other stories. There is a third tale, however, documented in the sightseeing log. Local legend claims the Lonely Giant is everything from the ghost of a Sildi Sultan to the prototype of a new model of Garlean Machina. Uldan scholars, however, simply believe him to be a Coerthan Goobbue who long lost his bearings during the chaos of the calamity, and after a long journey through the Black Shroud, died of exhaustion upon reaching Thanalan. The log continues, "Merciful are the rains that fall, for they give succour to the thirsting land, and comfort the old wounds of one who journeyed far from home." This log echoes the Goobbue's journey, and is another tale that implied it travelled from Coerthus. So then, of all these stories and legends of the Lonely Giant, which one is true? The tale of it being a Goobbue that travelled from Coerthus in the wake of the calamity is pretty plausible. Coerthus before the calamity was a lush and green land. Right afterwards, Coerthus' climate changed, and it became a land of never-ending winter. This sudden climate change could have been what forced the Goobbue to travel all the way to Thanalan. But if it was just looking for shelter or a better climate, it likely would have just stopped in the Black Shroud. And we do know the Coerthan Goobbue species did adapt to the climate eventually. Then we have this section of Barry's tale. He states the Goobbue collected seeds on its body from its journey, which upon its death sprouted and grew into what is seen today. However, the part of his tale that the Goobbue had seeds from the Bloodshore and Lanossia is quite odd. It's highly unlikely it could have gotten to Lanossia by itself. I checked the Bloodshore for any flowers that matched the ones on the Goobbue, but I didn't find any. Until I travelled to Raincatcher Gully, which is further inland, and found plants similar to those on the Goobbue. Alongside the plant, Raincatcher Gully itself is home to many a Goobbue. This is where Josper's tale comes into play. This Goobbue could have been a partner of an adventurer who travelled to Linosia and other parts of the world, with seeds collecting themselves on its body on their journey. It's historically documented that right before the Battle of Cartanau, many adventurers, some riding Goobbues, did gather in Coerthas. This Goobbue could have been left there to await its master's return, and when they didn't, it journeyed to find them, but was also injured by the destruction that Eorzea underwent. In terms of Eorzean geography, Cartanau lies between Mordona and Thanalan, so a shorter journey like that makes a lot more sense, especially if the creature was injured. So, we reach a crossroads once again. Which story is true and which one is false? We may never know its true storied origins and lore, but we do know the story of the Goobbue's meaning and the reason for it being in Eastern Thanalan when it comes to FF14 itself. It was the last day of FF14 1.0, the day the servers were closed for good. The Battle of Cartanau and Dalamud's descent drew near. Many gatherings of players happened this day, and one infamous gathering happened outside Ul'dah. Players from all over came together, mounted their loyal Goobbue mounts, and formed a wall, which would later come to be known as the Great Goobbue Wall. Together these players stood as one, a wall in the face of a world ending, until the servers went down and the battle began. It was this event that was immortalised in game. The lonely giant that rests today in Thanalan is paying homage to the players and adventurers who banded together during their last hours. This was the event that inspired the local legends and stories of the Goobbue that came to rest in Thanalan. We may never know who that Goobbue belonged to, but the Goobbue will forever serve as a fitting monument to the strength of the FF14 community, who when all seemed lost, regardless of differences, will always stand together, even in the face of calamity.